Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. I'd like to welcome you all to the first informal briefing on the preparations for the 56th session of the Commission for Social Development. Just before we begin, perhaps I could also draw your attention to the fact that interpretation into 6 languages is provided for this meeting. And this meeting is also webcast. I'd like to express appreciation for this to the Secretariat. The 56th session of the Commission will be held from Monday 29th of January to Wednesday the 7th of February next year. The Bureau decided to hold a briefing earlier this year, earlier on this occasion, with the hope of facilitating the preparations for the session. Allow me to highlight a few important points, and then I will ask Ms. Wenyan Yang, Chief of the Social Perspective on Development Branch of DERSA, on behalf of Mrs. Daniela Bass, Director of the Division for Social Policy and Development of DERSA, to provide us with more detailed information on the proposed organization of the Commission. We also have with us the Secretary of the Commission, Ms. Lana Emelina Sarte, who will, I'm sure, be ready to respond to any procedural and administrative questions that you may have. As delegations may know, the provisional annotated agenda for the session contained in document E/CN.5/2018/1 was issued yesterday in all official languages. The proposed organization of work is included in Annex 1 to the same document and has also been made available in an informal matrix format. Both documents are available in the room and will be posted on the Commission's website after today's briefing. This year will be the policy session of the Commission with a priority theme of strategies for eradicating poverty to achieve sustainable development for all. In order to produce a constructive outcome of this 56th session of the Commission, we will have a high-level panel discussion on the priority theme, which will take place on the afternoon of Monday, the 29th of January. This will be an excellent opportunity for the Commission and other key stakeholders to engage in a substantive dialogue on policy options to eradicate poverty to achieve sustainable development for all. The panel will facilitate a dialogue to examine policies and strategies that have proven to be effective in reducing poverty, including through ensuring policy coherence and enhanced coordination across sectors in line with the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. It aims to help member states in the preparation of a resolution on the priority theme. The Secretary-General's report on the priority theme will be published as document E/CN.5/2018/3. Given the importance of the priority theme, I urge all members of the Commission to send high-level representation for this panel discussion. In addition to the high-level panel discussion on the priority theme, 3 panel discussions will be held as follows. A panel discussion on the emerging issue of towards sustainable and resilient societies, innovation and interconnectivity for social development. And this will take place on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 30th of January. The note by the Secretariat on the emerging issue will be published as document E/CN.5/2018/5. There will then be a panel discussion on the 3rd review and appraisal of the Madrid Plan of Action on Aging, and this will be held in the morning of Wednesday, the 31st of January. The Secretary-General's report on the theme will be published as document E/CN.5/2018/4. And last but not least, a panel discussion on the topic towards inclusive, resilient, and sustainable development, an evidence-based approach to the mainstreaming of disability in the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of Agenda 2030 will take place in the afternoon of Wednesday, 31st of January. More detailed information on the panelists and moderators for the 4 panel discussions scheduled during this session will be provided by the Chief of the Social Perspective on Development branch a little later this afternoon. In order that we can have a meaningful and interactive discussion during the Commission, I would like to urge you to advise your delegations to resist reading out prepared statements during the panel discussions. We should come prepared to interact, propose new and innovative ideas, and share our experiences so that we can draw upon good practices and lessons learned. The Commission will begin the general discussion of sub-items A and B of Agenda Item 3 in the morning of Monday, 29th of January, following the opening. The general discussion will continue in the morning of Tuesday, 30th of January, morning and afternoon of Thursday, 31st of January, and will conclude in the morning of Monday, the 5th of February. There are no formal meetings planned all day on Friday, the 2nd of February, and on Monday, the 5th of February in the afternoon, and all day on Tuesday, the 6th of February, so as to allow delegations to wrap up any negotiations on the draft resolutions in time before our scheduled conclusion on that following Wednesday. The Bureau, in consultation with their regions, proposes to hold a joint general discussion of sub-items A and B of Agenda Item 3 so as to rationalize the work of the Commission. Delegations will be invited to inscribe under both items for one statement, which may be shared among several members of the same delegation if necessary or desired. The proposed time limits for the statements are 7 minutes for individual delegations, 12 minutes for the delegation speaking on behalf of groups of states, 5 minutes for intergovernmental organizations and UN system, and 3 minutes for non-governmental organizations in consultative status with the Economic and Social Council. The time allotted for the general discussion on the draft program of work is based on these time limits and the usual number of statements during the last 2 sessions. Turning to some organizational aspects on the work of the Commission, I would like to remind delegations that due to the limited number of seats available for observers and in accordance with established practice, only observers who communicate the composition of their delegations to the Secretariat by Wednesday, 24th of January, will be provided a nameplate on the floor of Conference Room 4. All others will be seated on a first-come, first-served basis. Secondly, the list of speakers for Agenda Items 3A and B will open on Monday, the 15th of January. Delegations wishing to inscribe on the list of speakers under sub-items A and B of Agenda Item 3 will be invited to do so by using the e-speakers on eDelegate. The Commission will be added to the eDelegate platform by early January. Agenda Item 3C will not have a list of speakers as it will be considered in the form of a panel discussion. More detailed information on how to inscribe on the list of speakers will be provided in the journal in due course. The list of participants will also be processed based on the submissions by delegations via e-participants on eDelegate, similarly to how it was done for the main committees of the General Assembly this year. More information will be published in the journal also closer to the session. The Paper Smart services will continue to be offered as an additional service for the 56th session of the Commission. Delegations wishing to circulate their statements electronically through the Paper Smart portal should send a copy of the statement at least 1 hour in advance of delivery to the Paper Smart email to be listed in the journal. The statements will be made available on the Commission Paper Smart portal upon delivery by delegations. I would now like to inform delegations that the Commission is expecting to take action on the following draft resolutions during this session. one resolution on the priority theme, one on the social dimension of NEPAD, one on the methods of work of the Commission, and finally one on aging. The division of responsibility among the Bureau is as follows. The draft resolution on the priority theme will be my responsibility as chair of the Commission. The draft resolution on the social dimension of NEPAD will be the responsibility of Mr. Lot Zonzi of Malawi. The draft resolution on the methods of work will be the responsibility of Mr. Bruno Rios of Mexico. And the draft resolution on aging will be the responsibility of Mr. Zhao Xiaoyun of China. Ms. Michaela Mechea of Romania has been nominated to serve as the Vice Chair cum Rapporteur of the Commission at its 56th session, to be elected at the opening of the session. Ladies and gentlemen, informal consultations on these draft texts are expected to begin as soon as possible in the new year. The deadline for the submission of draft proposals to the Secretariat is 3 p.m. on Friday, 2nd of February. In accordance with established practice, any revisions required to be made after the submission deadline should be read out at the formal meeting before action of the respective draft resolutions and will be incorporated into the final versions of the texts contained in the report of the Commission on its 56th session. In terms of the working methods review, a separate briefing will be held on the 15th of January, which will focus on the forthcoming review. Additional details will be announced in the journal as soon as possible on this extra briefing. Finally, I wish to emphasize that we have an important session this year, and I fully rely on you all, the members of the Commission, for your valuable collaboration and active participation to bring our meeting to a successful conclusion. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Wenyan Yang, Chief of the Social Perspective on Development Branch of DESA. May I give you the floor? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your very comprehensive briefing going over the program of the forthcoming session. I just wish to bring attention to the delegations and other partners in the room that the program, the draft program of work of the Commission has been circulated in this table format, which gives the day-to-day activity of the Commission. Is easy to read, and I trust you will make good use of this. It's not an official document, but it's a very useful information. It would also, this matrix would also be posted on the website of the Commission so that you can also check for any possible updates in later dates. So now I would go through a small presentation to share with you some of the highlights of the Commission session and some more details, especially with regard to the high-level panel discussions, who the panelists are, as we know at this moment. As I said, we might have updates later, so you are urged to check the websites of the Commission on regular basis for updates. So yes. So on this slide, you see that the Commission will start on the 29th January 2018 with the high-level opening meeting, where we are expecting, as now, the President of the General Assembly, President of the Economic and Social Council, the UN Secretary General, as well as the Undersecretary General of DESA, and civil society representative and youth representative to speak at this opening meeting. And then during the commission, we will have, as the chair mentioned, the commission is going to hold 4 high-level panel discussions on the priority theme in the afternoon of the opening day, that is the 29th of January, on emerging issues in the afternoon of the second day, Tuesday, 30th January. In the morning of the Wednesday, 31st, there will be a panel discussion on the review and appraisal of Madrid Plan of Action on Aging. And in that afternoon, the same day, there will be a high-level panel discussion on disability. At the same time, I also want to draw your attention to the other 2 boxes to the far right of this PowerPoint slide. That is, at the time the Commission is holding its annual meeting, the ECOSOC Youth Forum is also taking place from the 30th to the 31st of January with the theme, The Role of Youth in Building Sustainable and Resilient Urban and Rural Communities. And also, in parallel with the Commission for Social Development, in conjunction with the Commission session, Civil Society Forum will be held on the 2nd of February. That is the Friday, right? I believe that's the Friday. And the theme of the Civil Society Forum is social protection, including floors. And that's going to be focusing on social protection and related to strategies for eradication of poverty. So now, of those 4 panel discussions, I'll give you a little more detail on those panel discussions. The first panel to take place is the high-level panel discussion on priority theme. This panel would focus on policy actions and recommendations to effectively address the root causes of poverty within countries. And it's also a forum for knowledge sharing and exchange of experiences and innovative strategies that have been proven to be effective at eradicating poverty in all its forms at the national, regional, and international levels. As well as another focus will be on issues related to poverty eradication, including inequality, resource mobilization, and utilization of disaggregated data to ensure that no one is left behind, and as well as accountable public institutions. And finally, but not least, the panel would also focus on emerging issues, emerging challenges that's likely to affect the eradication of poverty and the new opportunities and new challenges that will affect our global efforts for poverty eradication. Now next, the speakers at this panel. We have Mr. Juan Somavia, who is the director of the Diplomatic Academy of Chile, who is the former special advisor to Secretary General on inter-regional policy cooperation, and former president of ECOSOC, and as well as the former Director General of the International Labour Organization. So he will be a keynote speaker to provide a broad context for the discussion of strategies for eradication of poverty. And then we also have the honor to hear presentations by Mr. Michel Servoz, Director General of Employment, Social Affairs, and Inclusion at the European Commission, and Mr. Mark McGreevy-Obey, Group Chief Executive of DePaul International and the founder of the Institute of Global Homelessness. And as we speak, we also expect there might be other panelists to be added to this panel, so therefore you need to check the website for updates. And the moderator for this panel discussion will be Ms. Jean Barrett, who is the Secretary General of the International Federation on Aging. So this is the makeup of the panel for the high level of the priority theme. Then the next panel the Commission would have is on emerging issues. That's going to be, actually the presentation is, we come to the emerging issues is in the afternoon of Tuesday, but let's just do it this way. On emerging issues, the panel would focus on identifying opportunities and challenges that innovation and interconnectivity can bring to society, and to examine the role of social policy to create conditions under which innovation and policy will be harnessed to promote social progress and achieving the SDGs. And the panel would also exchange information, knowledge, and good policies and good practices at the national, regional, and international levels, where such innovation and new technology have helped to advance social development. And the panel will also explore how the international community and the Commission for Social Development in particular could play an important role to leverage technological advances for social development and the achievements of SDGs. For this panel, we have the following panelists: Dr. Sen Gong, who is a research fellow of the Development Research Center of the State Council, Executive Vice President of the China Center for International Knowledge on Development from China. We have Ms. Noor Al-Maki Al-Jahani, who is the Executive Director of Doha International Family Institute, Professor Walter Valdivia, Senior Fellow of CSPO, a science policy think tank at Arizona State University, also faculty at Johns Hopkins. And you see that he's also a senior policy editor for the Mercatus Center at George Mason University in the United States. And we also have Professor Maria Garrido, who is a research assistant professor and principal research scientist at Technology and Science Change Group at the University of Washington. We also have Ms. Donna Shearder, president for the period 2015 and 17, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, very much related to information and innovation in information technology. And the moderator will be Mr. Jeremy Millard, who's the Chief Policy Advisor, Danish Technological Institute in Denmark, and a research fellow at various universities and European Commission on Public Sector Innovation, E-Governance, and Public Services. That now allow me to move on to the next panel, which is focusing on the third review and appraisal of the Madrid's International Plan of Action on Aging. That's actually going to take place in the morning, so that our order of the PowerPoint slides is a little bit mixed up. But anyway, this panel will aim to identify opportunities and challenges for further implementation of the Madrid's International Plan of Action on Aging, and explore how laws and policies aimed at enshrining and respecting the human rights of older persons can advance implementation of the plan of action, including through exchange of good practices. And also the panel will explore how member states and the Commission can create synergies between the plan of action and the SDGs to enhance the well-being and the rights of older persons, as well as their role in advancing sustainable development for all. Now allow me to move to the fourth high-level panel discussion. This is mainstreaming disability in the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of Agenda 2030. This panel would focus on issues related to disability inclusive development in the context of efforts to achieve the SDGs, and issues that concerns inclusion of persons with disabilities in socioeconomic development and humanitarian actions and enhancing equal access to rehabilitation and social services by persons with disabilities. And this panel will also focus on evidence-based research, including the status of disability data and statistics, which is a very important issue to promote more disability-inclusive implementation of the SDGs. For this panel, we have Madame Zhang Haidi, who is the chairperson of China Disabled Persons Federation. And we also have Mr. Mesbah Ansari, who is the deputy director of human rights of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I think, or it's Iraq. Here we have Iraq. I'm sorry, this is
Iran.
Iran, yes, I believe. And then we have Mr. Gerald Carletto, who is the lead economist and manager of the Center for Development Data at the World Bank. We have Professor Mary Kroc, who is on the Faculty of Law, University of Sydney from Australia. And we also have Ms. Catalina Devandas Aguela, who is a special rapporteur on the rights of persons with disabilities of the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. And this panel will be moderated by Ms. Venus Yagang, who is the Secretary General of Rehabilitation International and former president of Disabled People International. So that finished the detailed introduction of the four panel discussions. As I said, we expect some updates on those on the panel discussions in terms of panelists. So do check the website for any updates. So what I have reported to you, shared with you, is as of today, we have confirmed speakers for those four panels. So now I want to share with you the list of reports, official documents that have been prepared for the 56th session of the Commission. You have SG reports, strategies for eradication of poverty, the priority theme. You also have a SG report on the implementation of the objectives of the International Year of Family and its follow-up processes. There's also a SG report on the social dimension of the new Partnership for Africa's Economic Development, NEPAD. There's also a note by the Secretariat on the emerging issues, innovation and interconnectivity for social development. And we also have a SG report on the third review and appraisal of the Madrid Plan of Action on Aging. The informal consultations and side events for this associated with this session of the Commission for Social Development will start as soon as possible, as the chair had mentioned. And interested delegations should contact the facilitators, as the chair had shared with you, to consult for the draft resolutions and actively engage in the negotiations of those draft resolutions. And then, as the chair had said, and I just want to highlight, there will be no formal meetings on Friday, 2nd February. There will be informal consultations, time devoted to informal consultations. Then we also, our Division for Social Policy and Development have also received notifications of more than 60 side events as of today, covering a very wide range of topics. So you are encouraged to look at both the list of side events as well as to actively participate in those side events and engage in discussions. And the side events are listed at the website social.un.org/CSOCD, and that's the Commission's webpage. Lots of the information that I shared with you are available on that page, obviously including the list of site events. Then the afternoon of 7 February will be the concluding session of the 56th session of the CSOC-D, or concluding meeting. At the conclusion of the 56th session, the 57th session would open immediately for the purpose of election of a new bureau and such. And then again, just to bring to your attention, the deadline for submission of draft proposal is Friday, 2nd February at 3 p.m. And finally, I also want to share with you information regarding delegates with disabilities at the 56th session of the Commission. And please inform the Secretariat in advance if on your delegations there are any delegates with disabilities that require particular support. Let us know. We would provide access and other forms of support. And contact the UN Accessibility Center at this email address, accessibilitycenter@un.org. And also our division have access to this email that we will get information and contact you and support you. So that concludes my walkthrough of the highlights, relevant highlights of the Commission session. And I just once more, I just want to remind you that the website of the Commission is social.un.org/CSOC-D. And on this last slide is at the lower right corner. Although it's small, but it's very important. Do check for updates. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Yang for her briefing, and I would like to open the floor now to delegations. Thank you. I would like to open the floor to delegations who might wish to make comments or pose questions. The floor is open. All crystal clear by the looks of it. I'd like to give the floor to the delegate from Portugal. Do I need to press on?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's on. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the briefing. I didn't have the chance to see the speakers for the high-level panel of aging. Would you mind putting back, please? Thank you.
The Secretariat has kindly also offered to put all these slides on the website so that it may be clearer than photographs of the screen. So. The distinguished delegate of Egypt, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the Secretariat for the very informative briefing. I was about to ask if there is a possibility to share the PowerPoint presentation, but the Secretariat answered already. And the second question is about the reports and the concept notes which we will guide us during the session. Do you have any estimation when should we receive these documentations? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This thing. The official documents, SG report and such official documents are going to be issued in all official languages 6 weeks prior to the opening of the commission session. And the other documents you refer to, such as concept notes and for the panel discussions, we can post those draft documents online as soon as possible. And shortly after today's meeting, we will have such concept notes posted. And then again, that check for the Commission's webpage for updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yang, for that information. Are there any other questions or comments that delegations would like to pose? If not, I'd see no indications further to what we have. If not, in that case, I'd like to thank all delegations for their attendance and participation this afternoon. As I mentioned earlier, and as the Secretariat has also mentioned, we will be holding our next briefing on the 15th of January, and we'll focus mainly on the forthcoming review of working methods of the Commission. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for attending this briefing. Wish you all the best for the holiday season, although I know we still have quite a lot to do before we get there. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.